Hello there, everybody. Welcome back. I'm here to be talking about Tony, which is the newest film from A24, and it's based off, the early life of Anthony Bourdain. It's some events from his memoir, Kitchen Confidential, which follows, him initially wanting to be like a writer and to do something in that profession, but he takes an interest in this one lady, and when again, this scholarship or gig kind of falls through, he, lies and, says that, yeah, he's doing that, but he needs to be at this town in Massachusetts. And through a series of events, he basically becomes part of an employee at this, seaside kitchen. And, over the course of the film, he, gets into that profession of eventually becoming a famous, chef like we all know him as now. Now, I'm not as familiar with him, or even I didn't really know about this movie. And normally, when you've checked out my channel over the years, I don't see as many films as I, used to back, in the early years. And I usually go to see like either the big budget films, like the superhero Disney types or whatever, or I go to see, films that pique my interest. But there's this thing that I guess happens every Monday at my local Regal, and it's like a Monday movie mystery night. And so I was hanging out with a friend over the weekend, and I thought it'd be fun to maybe check this out, especially because the tickets were pretty discounted at like around $5 or something. And, it was like a new upcoming movie that we don't know about, and part of the fun is to kind of guess like what's the movie. And so I was like, sure, let's go check it out. And it was this film. And so, honestly, I thought it was pretty interesting because it's made as kind of like a coming-of-age tale because, he wants to be a writer and all, but he's, in his, like, early 20s and all, and he's, in, like, a new area that he hasn't really been at. He's away from his family, and he's just, I guess it's kind of like finding himself on, it's like, I was expecting at some point in the film for him to be like, yeah, I love cooking, or this is my real passion, but when watching the film, not to really dive into too many spoilers, he's so fixated on like wanting to impress this lady and, like doing stuff to like pique her interest. And like you never really found that moment where he's like, I'm ecstatic, I want to be like a chef, or I want to be cooking. At least that I've really picked up on. And it kind of becomes like he just becomes like content with, this isn't so bad, just this type of life, this type of profession. And I don't know, it felt interesting, I guess, because I guess a lot of people could relate to, like, they have a passion or like they want to do this certain thing and it may not work out or may be unrealistic, and then they kind of, I guess, settle at something that they are pretty decent at or something that's not that bad. And I guess in a way that could be relatable for some people, and or not some people, like a good amount of people. And so in terms of that, it's interesting. But I really did like the location, like where it's set. It's set in like the mid 70s, I'd say, 1975, I believe. So there's some, good references. They did a good job with, how people dressed and like the hairstyles and, the aesthetic, I thought was really well done. The performances from the cast all around, like Dominic Sessa, who plays Anthony Bourdain, I thought he was pretty solid. Now, I'm not too familiar. Like, I've heard the name and I've seen, clips and stuff of him, but I'm not too familiar with in terms of his personality. But with the role that it felt like that they wanted, this character to be portrayed as in the film, I thought he did a really solid job. But I will say the main, like, scene stealer, like, the best part of the film by far, I think everyone would agree, is Antonio Banderas as, like, the, kind of like mentor owner of this restaurant, who, kind of teaches, a young Anthony a thing or two about this profession and, just giving him advice and kind of taking him under his wing by letting him crash at his place over the course of the summer. I thought, their dynamic and just his role in the film was really solid. And, I just thought it was like a nice little film. You could tell it's probably gonna maybe be a potential awards play. It just feels like one of those films because A24 is kind of like, they make films that are kind of mainstream, sorta, for people like, Everything Everywhere All at Once was pretty popular. Civil War made some rounds. Backrooms, obviously. but they also have that fine line of making films that are kind of minor mainstream that casuals might know, and then the elite like critics and like awards favorites as well. As so it's really curious to see. This might fall towards the awards side, but it's still early to tell if it might pick up some buzz. But I would like to see Antonio Banderas get some recognition, because I thought he carries the film in a lot of ways, and I thought he was really good. But all around, this film was pretty interesting. It was, nice to go see it with a friend, and that was basically my generic thoughts on Tony. So, what'd you all think if you've had a chance to see this film? Because I don't think it's released like wide yet, but it was released, I believe, this past weekend, limited release, so maybe you had a chance to see it. Again, let me know down below in the comment section, and if you want to hit the bell as well to get notified when I upload, that means so much to me. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you all later. Bye.